All right, so welcome everyone to our Nordic MUG session, leveraging Marketo's releases. My name is Veronica and I am a Marketo certified expert. I'm currently working as the marketing ops manager at a company called Alma. Alma is a US company operating in the mental health care space, connecting therapists with consumers. I have been working with Marketo for about 6 years. Some of you who joined this Nordic MUG know that I started my Marketo journey in Copenhagen at a company called Falcon in the software space. I spent a few years there learning the ropes of Marketo, and then I moved to an enterprise company, and now I'm back to the startup space. More than a year ago, Michael and I started this MUG for the Nordics, and we are pretty excited to strengthen the Marketo community in this area.
I'll go then. My name is Michael Knudsen. I am on the product side, so my role is a solutions consultant in the Adobe organization. I focus quite a lot of my time on marketing automation and Marketo in particular. I come from a few different tech backgrounds, mainly in sales, but in my previous work, I worked for a content management company whom also utilizes Marketo. And I was the Marketo guy located in Denmark. Hence, I got exposed to Marketo at that point, and I then turned over to kind of the consultancy, the suggest or the how to say, sales side of things approximately 2.5 years ago now, when I joined Marketo/Adobe. Yeah, and that's me.
So Michael always has the most up-to-date information about Marketo. Awesome. Do you want to talk about the agenda, Michael, or should I?
You can go ahead, that's fine.
All right, so for today, we wanted to cover the latest releases. There has been quite a few big ones. The MSI one, the dynamic chat is of interest to everyone. And as you know, Michael has the latest information, and I will tell you about the executable campaigns and how do I use that. And then a smaller update about the global form validation rules. We would love to hear questions, so drop them in the chat as we talk through these topics. And at the end, we're going to do a QA with everyone. And the last slide is the one I'm most excited about. So make sure you stay with us until the end, because we want to announce the next in-person meeting for our Nordic MUG. A couple of rules here from Adobe. We want to make sure that this space is first and foremost for the users, so we keep it as a safe space to share challenges. So we would like to stay away from promotion or pitching and contacting people without their consent. For those who just joined, we are recording this session. We would like to have it as a reference, and then the recording will be uploaded to the Marketo YouTube channel, so everyone who couldn't join us can watch it later. So if you're not comfortable with that, you can turn off the camera, for example, or send us any questions you have. Another thing we're asking users to do is stay connected with our chapter. To do this, navigate to mugs.marketo.com. This is like a marketplace for all the user groups around the world. You can create an account and join our chapter. We are the Nordics MUG, so we're trying to get people from Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and Finland to join us. And as I mentioned, we are a 1-year-old MUG. And here in mugs.marketo.com, you will see the previous sessions. And when we plan a session, you will receive a notification and an email. Let's look at a few more updates. One update I have today is about the certifications. During the past year, all the certification went through a process of being rewritten or renamed. There's a bit of confusion around that. So the latest information I have is around these 3 certifications. The first one here, the Certified Professional, is recommended for users with 3 to 6 months of Marketo experience. And this is considered like the entry-level certification. The next one here is what we used to call the expert, the Marketo Certified Expert. This is for users, or better said, for Marketo admins that have at least 18 months of experience. And the third one here is the Architect, which is the highest level of certification and is recommended for those with at least 5 years of experience designing integrations, implementing instances, and definitely working in different Marketo instances. At the bottom of the slide here, there's the link to the exam guide, but let me post that in the chat so everyone has access. I will also share a link to a virtual MUG we did in Spain discussing all the certifications. Here's a list of other MUG sessions scheduled for this month. All the MUG sessions are open for all to join, so doesn't matter if you're in Europe, you can join North American MUGs and the other way around. You can see that I would actually recommend this one about APIs. I heard that this was a really good session. You can find it on YouTube, on Marketo's YouTube channel. These ones were already ran in the past, so we're kind of late in the month, but you have the option to see the recordings.
Great place to find these nuggets of gold around, specific areas that you're interested in. So if you find a subject like this that interests you, definitely dig into it. That's my suggestion as well.
Yeah. All right. So I think with that, we are going to dive into our topics.
And the first one is around just quickly giving you guys a bit of a let's call it an ended update, or at least the idea was that I wanted to highlight a few of the sessions on Summit that ended end of or mid-March last month, around some of the subjects that I think would be relevant for you guys to just have a quick look at. These are kind of the 4 sessions that I've highlighted around Marketo, and then I added a 5th one, which is more of a nice to know thing, not necessarily relevant for our subject, but still. So and they notice that I put the number in here, the S704. So that's the way you would find the link to the different sessions. So yeah, it's quite easy to go through that. The first session was run by Jessica and Max. These 2 guys are champions of Marketo, like our own Veronica is. And they took us through a series of some of the reports that exists out of the box in Marketo. So I personally thought it was a really great overview of just understanding some of the report capabilities with a lot of context and a lot of background in it from these 2 guys. It's quite obvious that they know what they're talking about and have been for quite some time. So a really good session to just have a look at. Next one is around tokens, cloning, and other kind of baseline aspects in Marketo. This could be considered a good baseline for any marketeer that works with Marketo, just because it gives you that baseline understanding of what it is those different subjects actually include and what it gives you from a daily usage perspective. How do I optimize my Marketo instance both on a local scale but also on a global scale? This is Kira and Beth that's holding this session. Again, two champions that have been working with Marketo for quite some time. They are also on the team, I think like you, Veronica, that's helped write some of those exams for the certification tests that's been going on. So experts in their field, definitely. Then quickly, I want to highlight the dynamic chat walkthrough, and I'll demo the dynamic chat today, but it's a great little session to go have a look at to get some real world experience for how does it actually work for a customer, because we have in this session an Adobe person, Srikanth, and Carolina from Palona. Yeah. She sounds like she's from Europe, at least. I think it's going to be relevant for kind of our local perspective on what dynamic chat can actually be utilized for. I'll dig deeper into it, as I mentioned in that part of the session, but it's a great place to go get that real world. So what does it actually do and how can I use it? Yeah, look into that. Then my how do you say, most important aspect I think around Marketo is the ability to run the center of excellence approach so that we can clone existing approaches to marketing initiatives. I really love this session, the S711. It's run by Cynthia and Justin. Cynthia is an Adobe employee, but Justin comes from Bayer corporate science. He explains how they at Bayer have been utilizing the center of excellence approach with Marketo on a global scale. So it's a really interesting case, but it also gives an idea of how you can actually start implementing that in your own implementation. So again, a really good session. And then at the end, as a note, I want to mention that for those of you that are interested in CDP, so customer data platforms, this is a pretty good baseline presentation of what it is that Adobe provides from this perspective. If you're interested in it, go have a look. If you're not, please disregard that session. But those were kind of the sessions that I wanted to highlight from a summit perspective. Yeah, please find some time and have a look at those.
Yeah, I agree. I saw some of this session, especially the one on reporting. That was really, really good. And my team saw the ones about tokens, and again, very, very good feedback.
It's a great baseline. It does take you from your first time in Marketo, what is it like? And so you see a lot of things, but really it's good for everybody, I think, to be reminded what it is, right? So let's move on to the next slide. So a thing I quickly want to mention here before we move on to some of the more interesting bits is a semi-silent release that was done last month or beginning of this month, where it is now supported that Marketo can enable sales inside Dynamics or Salesforce without the need of the native integration. This has been a requirement for quite some years now, that without the native integration, it was not possible to run Sales Insight by Marketo. That is no longer the case. You can go on to Experience League at adobe.com and find the documentation around this. So basically, this is going to open up for customers that potentially have more than one CRM connected to Marketo and still want to utilize this in the Dynamics and Salesforces of their CRMs. This is going to open up for the customers that are looking to run a non-native integration for whatever reason towards Marketo, but still want to have the ability for marketing to share insights with sales. So it's a great little perspective that's been opened up for now, and it hasn't been given a lot of airtime in the release schedule and the release webinars. So yeah, just wanted to have heads up on that today. Next slide. And now we are going to go into, I think, somewhat both a demo mode and also hopefully give you guys an idea of what it is dynamic chat is actually about. Dynamic chat was released as a beta end of last year for some few selected customers that were given the option to actually go have a look at this new approach inside of Marketo. Dynamic chat going forward will be a new native channel like email is it today, where we can start to communicate with customers in the manner that we find relevant, in the situation that they find relevant, so that we start to being able to personalize the experience, not just on a web page or in an email, but also in the conversation that we have with them in a chat scenario like this. It offers up a simple UI where you're able to log in and use drag and drop to build conversations. We synchronize the activity that happens inside of the chat directly into the Marketo database, which means that we are catching or capturing all of that activity and allowing us to run automation flows based on that activity directly inside of our smart campaigns and smart lists in Marketo. With the release of dynamic chat, we are enabling integrations into salespeople's calendars. So now going forward, when somebody wants to talk to a salesperson, a service representative, somebody else where it makes sense to build a conversational approach like this, Marketo now has a standardized integration that lets us do this towards Outlook and Google calendars as is. I guess a quite important part of this is that this is now something that's going to be made available to every single Marketo customer, no matter the package they're on. So whether you're a enterprise customer or let's call it a smaller customer, it makes no difference. Everybody gets this, and they get it this year. So they're in the process of implementing this already. More than a few customers have received this capability, this new channel in their instance, it's literally a question of time if you don't have it already. It is somewhat new, and you'll see why in just a minute when I start to actually go into kind of showing what it does and how it functions. Just because it's a mix of the UI is a mix of, how do you say, the Experience Cloud, which is kind of the Adobe world, and Marketo UI, which is the one that we know and love, right? So I'll try to show you guys this now. And then we'll try to cover the questions as they come along, or if you guys can wait, then write them in the chat like Marika has done, and then we'll take it at the end. That might be the best. So I am going to share my screen like this, and we should now see first just highlighting the little talk we had about the summit session here, where we had Jessica and Max that talked about reports. So this is the page or site that you want to go find those at, right? To start with, inside of your instance of Marketo, we will now start to see dynamic chat going forward looking like this. So it'll actually have a button right here. If your instance have been enabled with this, somebody at your organization has received an email and been notified that it's been activated. If it's not showing up here, it's literally a question of setting up permissions correctly. So make sure that your user roles have the right permissions to show dynamic chat, and the button will show up here quite immediately by checking that on. If I click this button, it'll open up the UI that looks like this. Notice how the UI is now completely different. We're now inside the Experience Cloud UI, which you could call more Adobe-fied than the Marketo side of things. What that actually means is that we now have access to a dialogue builder here on the left side, a overview of existing meetings that have been built, routing that has happened, calendars that have been integrated with, some configuration and some integration aspects in regards to connecting the dynamic chat instance here with your Marketo instance in your own setup. The actual dialogues themselves are built quite straightforward. You have a list of dialogues here that we could just reutilize. I've built just a quick one here that we can have a look at. The way you actually build up the dialogue, the actual chat instance itself, is by first creating an audience, very much like we're used to doing with Marketo when sending out emails or creating audiences with smart lists and smart campaigns. You're building audiences here. You'll notice that it is the exact same level of data that we have available in Marketo that we can start to utilize directly here in the chat. So that means that I can actually go in here and find the country or the city or whatever it is that I'm interested in, connecting as an audience I want to communicate with, and I would go in here and choose that data. And it's the data that's coming out of Marketo that's being utilized here. So this is the Marketo data that we're looking at, and this is where the integration piece actually comes into play. The URL here at the top lets us choose which site or page on our website we want the chat to be visible on. I've created a Marketo landing page in this case, and I'm utilizing my landing page as the place I want to show this. Just to show you guys that it actually functions the way that we want to, I've opened up an incognito browser here. And if I just refresh this, you'll notice here at the very bottom right, we have the little chat bar. But if I refresh the screen, we should see the chat pop up here again with a little hello, welcome screen. There we go. Hello, can you spare 5 minutes? And if I click on that, it'll open up and start that conversation and have me start, communicating with the chatbot through this interface. So as a marketeer, the way I actually built that engagement and that interaction is utilizing the Stream Designer. And this is a canvas, you could say, that's available inside of the Marketo application now. So we're able to start building messages. So these are the first initial messages that I'm sending from the chat towards the person, the lead, the contact that I want to communicate with, that I built in the audience criteria first. Then I can ask them questions. These are the buttons we see here. So what you're actually interested in, cars, bikes, or UFOs. If they choose cars, I'll say, great. Which brand, and then choose a few brands that I can go for, and then I can start to capture information and push that data into Marketo by updating attributes inside of the Marketo database. So as you can see, we're able to start utilizing this aspect very much like you would fill out a form for signing up for an event, to communicate with somebody internally in our organization. Having gated content we want to control. This is a way to start getting information before we actually push that in. And we can do all the things that we're used to inside of Marketo when building these communication aspects. So I can build in text, but I can still put in my different attributes, my different tokens from the Marketo database. Like we're used to, again, we go in and find the specific attribute we're interested in, we push it into the view, and we can actually take it from there. So it's very straightforward and simple to actually work with. So if we, for example, wanted to add a question here after the UI here, I'll drag in a question. Obviously, I'm having some connectivity issues. Can you guys hear me still? Okay, so no worries. But the idea is that I'm able to drag it in here, associated with that next step here in the ball, and then we can move from there. And then through this ball, I'm able to actually drag these around and basically build them as I want to. Let me just refresh the screen to see if that actually functions. So I can take this and actually send them over here to Great. And I can send them over here to Great if I wanted to. Maybe I don't want to, so we can undo that and go back and forth like we actually want to. The idea behind the actual setup of these is that, of course, you can start working with them directly in the UI and start building the different kind of questions you actually want answers to. And that's all great and perfect. But as part of the UI here itself, we're able to actually preview how this functions directly in the UI. So if I go in here and start clicking around, we can see what's the experience that the user is going to get when they actually start having this conversation. When I then experience the way that I think it should, well, that's perfect. Then we can, take it all the way to the end and see this is perfect, that this is what I want. Then I can publish this change, and then it'll show up like that on the website as it comes from there. So as you can see, everything is quite straightforward. It's very drag and droppy, like we would like to be, and it gives us this ability to actually start having these conversations. I do need to mention a caveat here, because it's important that you guys understand that this is not what I would call an enterprise chat engine, like we know from some of the partners that are connected with Marketo today. So if you guys are on a system like Drift or one of its equals out there, this is not a new Drift, not by far. This is a great tool to start down the path of start engaging with this type of approach for marketing. So if chat is something you're looking into, this is the perfect first step for that. It's not necessarily going to be enough in the long run. That's perfectly fine. But Drift would be a next perfect step for that. So understanding that this is not a new Drift, it's not something we're competing with Drift on, not at all. It's quite the opposite. It's an option to actually start, learning what that's all about, and then you can, grow into Drift as an approach going forward. So that's quite an important perspective to take into consideration. If we move into the Marketo side of things, I've just pre-built here a quick view on some of the things that we can work with. So dynamic chat has its own set of triggers inside of a smart campaign that we can utilize. But of course, also it exists inside the filters, where we have the same kind of approach where we can look for dialogue, appointment schedules, engage with the dialogue, interactions with the document, or reach out to a dialogue goal. And we can utilize those as filters that are branded on the different leads and contexts that we're working with, and then use this inside Marketo to start personalizing, to start engaging with people for nurturing and so on and so forth. Right. Let's go back to the slides. Veronica, I think you have those. So I'll start sharing here. And the next slide basically just gives you guys an idea on where it's moving next. So already now it's actually come to an extent where when you build a new dialogue inside the dynamic chat, you can actually choose a series of templates to build that dialogue on. So whether it's a blog or a lead generation or a sign up for an event, there's actually a few templates like this that you can build it on instead of copying an existing one and then going from there. Support for multilingual implementations is already implemented in it. We're expanding that to more languages going forward. So you see an example here with, I believe this is Japanese or Chinese. I'm actually not 100% sure, I'm sorry. I think it's Japanese. And this is then the approach that you're able to build these conversational approaches utilizing different languages. And in the upcoming releases, we're going to look at integrating dynamic chat with Adobe Document Cloud, so that we can start to utilize the documents that we have stored there as part of the conversation, instead of having it being goal finished, send an email from Marketo with a link to the document, so that we can share that gated piece of content that we want people to actually work with, and then go from there. So that's a few of the kind of news items that's coming out. Do we want to do questions now, or do we want to wait? I think wait is probably good. Veronica.
It's how you prefer.
Are there some quick...
I see there's 2 questions so far. One is from Marika, one from me. Maybe
so I can take the Marika one first to just quickly. Yes, it is free. There's no fee add-on for it. It'll just be implemented in your instance this year, if it hasn't already been. And every customer gets it.
Awesome. We like free.
Agreed.
Yeah, my question is about implementing the chat with non-Marketo landing pages. Want to gauge what's the level of effort there.
It's extremely simple. So you add a little JavaScript to your page in the location where you want it, and then you're done. So it's literally that simple. Yes, you do need to add in the URL to your audience segmentation. You saw that we built in the beginning, but that's the extent of it. It's very simple to actually do these things. So very much like you would add a Munchkin code or a web personalization piece of JavaScript to your pages. This is probably even simpler because you can put it into your content management systems. How do you say? What you see is what you get editor type scenario. Jose, do you know if Dynamic Chat will implement any AI functionality in the future to, for example, protect against typos and be able to fuzzy, blah, blah, blah. And the short answer is that potentially is somewhere where we're going to go. It's not a next year thing, definitely. Also coming a little back to the aspects that I mentioned about drift, because you're slowly moving into some of the more enterprise capabilities there from my personal point of view. So if those are functionalities that you think are going to be relevant for your implementation or for your customer's implementation, then you know, potentially look at one of those tools. So yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Languages. Would you know which languages are supported?
No, I do not, but that's something I can figure out and share with you guys so you have a better idea. To my knowledge, they did nothing to get Japanese and all those UTF-8 codes based languages working. So I think it's more around Arabic and a few of the other ones that are going to be a little more relevant to have a conversation about, just because we need to reverse the written angle and stuff like that. But that's something we can definitely find out and try to share.
Awesome. Yeah. And if you have more questions, just drop them in the chat and we can answer as we go. I'll move on to our next topic, executable campaigns. So many users in the community got excited about this one, including myself. So let's see, what are executable campaigns? They are basically a new type of a smart campaign. And then you will create it in Marketo in the same way you would create any smart campaign. The difference is that you will have to check this box down here when you create it to say this is an executable campaign, and they would have a smart list, a flow, and a schedule. They work with the execute campaign flow step, which means they have to be called from another campaign. And I will share examples of how this looks like. What is different is that you don't schedule it. It will run automatically when it's linked to the parent campaign. So basically, they act like children to their parent campaigns. In the executable campaign, you can use filters to further narrow down your audience. And then you can also use flow steps like, you know, change data value, change the score, or sync to CRM. For now, the wait steps and the webhooks are not available inside executable campaigns, but everything else is. The token context is another win for this type of campaign, because you can choose to use tokens from the parent campaign or the tokens in the program where you have the executable campaigns. This is useful for things like interesting moments. The main use cases for these type of campaigns are, you know, being reusable workflows and order of operations. This makes them great for scale. You can have one executable campaign that is being called from different campaigns. For example, if you have a campaign that processes each of your forms, you can point that all those campaigns to one scoring campaign or one interesting moment campaigns, making it easy and centralized. Also, if you want to make changes in the future, you can do it in one place only. And then when the campaigns are active, you will see this light bulb with this wheel next to it. And this is how you recognize and differentiate between the smart campaigns in Marketo. All right, so the executable campaigns are basically a request campaign on steroids. So an updated request campaign. So previous to this release, let's just focus on the left side of the screen here. Many users would work with request campaigns where you have, a campaign, a trigger, like person is created. And then in the flow step, you will request a campaign that will maybe normalize the data, for example, the country or the state. And then the other flow steps in that campaign. The problem here is that this campaign and the request campaign would execute in parallel. And that sometimes creates problems because probably you need this data before you insert to CRM, but if they if they run in parallel, maybe here the data is not updated at this point, and that creates a problem because it's not ready for assignment rules, or it will give a sync error. And so many users in Marketo try to solve this by inserting a wait step right here to make sure this has run before the insert to the CRM. There's like a fine balance here, because if, and I spent so many hours just figuring out this, if the wait step is too short, you risk that this has not finished. If the wait step is too long, you risk that you impact on other processes updating the same record in CRM. For example, if you have like a book a meeting tool, that will wait for this process to finish. So this was the pain point, and this is what the executable campaign solves for. Now, if we look at the second half of the screen here, you see the same setup. So a campaign where a person is created, the flow step here is execute campaign, goes to the child campaign, runs these two flow steps, and only after this is done comes back to the main campaign and continues. So this is a guarantee that this will be finished before the parent campaign step progresses. And so we eliminate that need for the wait step and the need for guessing when this will be over, and everything will run smooth, and then it's easier to scale. If you have questions, please drop them in the chat so we can talk more about these type of campaigns.
It might be worth mentioning here that in the future, we're going to come out with a revisit to the campaign priority. So that's something that's coming out soon, which fits very well with this. I think it's going to, expand some of the opportunities even further. So you can start to set a medium high or low medium high kind of approach on your campaigns and when they should run. From priority perspective, it's going to be interesting to see where that takes us.
Yeah, definitely. A few of the use cases for using this type of campaign, like we already seen, standardizing values, enriching, changing the life cycle, sometimes scoring and interesting moments. This is something I already implemented in my instance, and I actually dropped here some screenshots to see how this flow step looks like. It's called Execute Campaigns. And then I need to name the campaign. That's the executable campaign. And then I have to define if I want to use the parent campaign token. And here I have a field update campaign example. The next one here is a scoring one. And the last one is an interesting moment one. Here you can see I am using the parent campaign token context. And this is for using the name of the program. So I'm calling interesting moment from different campaigns, and I'm just using program name token. So regardless of where that campaign is executed from, the name of the initial program will be named in the interesting moment and will be displayed in the CRM instance. So just to sum up the benefits of these type of campaigns, they will eliminate the wait steps and guesses, improve the order of operations, and cut the complexity and workarounds like daisy chains and whatnot in a Marketo instance. I'm excited about it, and I know there's a few sessions. So at the end, I will share a few recordings with you if you want to learn more about it. On to the next update, global form validation rules. This is a feature that allows you to block specific domains from submitting one of the, all of the Marketo Engage forms. For example, if your business does not want personal email addresses in your database, like Yahoo or Google, then this is how you would implement it. So basically in your admin section in Marketo, you would see global form validation rules, and then you can create rules there. This is how you would do that. You will give it a name. This is based on the email field for now, and this is locked. It works by exclusion, so you have to define which domains you want to exclude, and then you would type those domains separated by a comma in the rules box. You can also define the error message that will be displayed on your form when a user inputs this kind of email address. They will be shown an error and they will not be able to submit the form. And when you're ready, you just have to activate it here. It's super simple. Marketo is providing a list of 3,700 consumer domains in a standard inactive rule like this. You can use that if you want to block all consumer emails or create your own and use only some of it. But definitely this is available in all instances and you should be able to find it in your admin section. So for the resources, there's a few recordings around executable campaigns. Actually, let me drop it in the chat. There was a MUG session and a skills exchange spotlight with more examples of how this is being used and what to look out for. And in terms of global form validation rules, there was also a session that I'm dropping here in the chat, so you can watch it later. And I think that's it. That's all we had. And now we can open for Q&A, and I will stop the recording.